I've got just one job to do here today, is to set up our discussion about not just what's brought us to here this year, but what might be ahead of us for each of you and all of us together as a community in the world advancing synthetic biology for the common good. And so if I could get my slides really quick, I just want to share some things. Some of this is going to be very personal because I want to invite you to experience what we're doing together in your own way, in ways that manifest and are real for you and what might be ahead of you. This word synthesis, it's such an interesting word. When we put this word in front of biology, we get synthetic biology, but I don't think we fully understand or even are very close to understanding all of what this might mean. So you take this word and you go back in time and you understand where does the word come from and pick your favorite language. For me, what I love is this idea of synthesis is just about putting things together. Composition, almost like music or dance or a book you might write. But of course, we put this word in front of biology. So here's a suspension bridge that's composed with biology from the roots of a rubber tree. Here is the watercolor from David Goodsell of E. coli, molecules being composed to create a living, reproducing machine. This is where the awesome, unique physical powers of biology manifest. And so when we talk about synthetic biology, we're talking about getting systematically better at composing or putting together living systems at these scales. And then the question that shows up is, to what end? To what future? When I teach at Stanford, one of the exercises we do with our undergraduates is we ask them what it's going to be like when they're as old as I am. We call this activity 50 in the 50s. How many people here just make as much noise as possible if you're under 100 years old? Tom? All right. Now, if you're under 30 years old, let's hear it. 20. 15. 13. All right. Except for you, everybody else in this room will be at least 50 years old at some point in the 2050s, as old as I am today. And so I want to invite you to think about that. What do you want to be true in the 2050s? Because for you and all of us, it's not too late to change that vector if you really care about it. Let me share some personal things to give you a sense of how some things change over the decades and other things don't. Right, so you can see this photo from 20 years ago at MIT when Tom Knight and Randy Redberg and Pam Silver and others, we worked with our students then to try and figure out what it would mean to advance synthetic biology in this systematic way that flows into the iGEM community. Just 3 years later, I was traveling in China in behalf of iGEM with a colleague from Caltech, that's me in the white shirt, and the colleague Christina standing next to me, and we were in Tianjin. And we had 5 universities talking about synthetic biology. I still have my slides from this talk. I looked at all the slides, all the things we were talking about. Most of the ideas in those slides have not yet been made real. It's mostly still ideas at the core of this. That same trip, we were able to go to Beijing and had a lovely time at the Summer Palace. I just found this photo on the plane ride coming back. I haven't seen this photo in over a decade. And iGEM took Christina and me all over the world over the decades. This is us in London some years later with Professor Dick Kitney from Imperial and the London-based iGEM teams. And this is just a few years ago, Christina and I moved to California from MIT, and these are what we call our uncontrolled experiments. One is named Sam, and the other is named Max. And so when I think about the year 2050, and I think about your thoughts about the year 2050, of course I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about what I've seen that's changed and not changed over the last 20 years. How are we going to get what we wish for? The way I think about it from a nerd perspective is I think about 3 dimensions: joules, bits, and atoms. Energy, information, and stuff. That's what we need from a nerd perspective, from a physics perspective, to operate ourselves and our civilization. And if we did it right, we'd have a flourishing humanity on this planet that would get along with everything else, and it'd be just great. So how do we solve these three dimensions of joules, bits, and atoms? And of course, biology operates, as we all know, at this intersection of energy, right? Photosynthesis, information, the genome, and stuff, the material. Even though we're familiar with what we're doing in iGEM and we're familiar with synthetic biologies that exist today, I still don't think we're thinking about it the right way. I think we're making qualitative misalignment or just not dreaming big enough. I think we're looking at the future and we need to leapfrog into a very different future than we're familiar with. One of the ways I think about it is I think about these leaves. Can anybody tell me what factory, in what continent, in what country the leaves come from on the trees? Do they come from Detroit? Do they come from Rotterdam? Do they come from, Jurong Island in Singapore? No. The leaves on trees come from the trees. The energy arrives where the trees are going to be. The molecules arrive where the trees are going to be. The biology grows where the biology is going to be. It's nature's ultimate distributed manufacturing platform. It's decentralized. It's deglobalized. Well, that's very interesting. This is perhaps a superpower of biology. All atoms are local. We could grow things locally. We know that everybody has biology where everybody needs biology. This is a 2013 iGEM project from the Betancourt team in Paris, helping with nutrition and food upgrades in India. So what might be the biotic future, and what might be the role of the biotic future in contributing to the year 2050, and what would we do about it? I don't know that I have this right, but I'll share with you our best thinking, and then it'll be up to us to really figure it out and make it real. So I'm going to call this in 6 dimensions. The first thing is, instead of designing a computer in one location and having it built somewhere else and having it be shipped back, why don't we just design the biology anywhere and then grow the biology anywhere we need it? Design the DNA anywhere, in the biotic future, we're going to design the DNA anywhere, we're going to grow the biology anywhere. In the biotic future, anything we can encode in DNA, we can grow it. There's going to be biotechnologies that are not locked away in vats. It's going to be on us and in us and all around us. In the biotic future, how many postdocs, how many experiments were done building this building? I hope the answer is 0, because that would mean the building would likely fall down on us, right? That's because structural engineering is no longer only a research discipline. It's called design, build, work. It's not design, build, test, learn, design, build, test. No, it's called design, build, work, right? So in the biotic future, bioengineering workflows will just work. Of course, we'll use computers to help us get better. And biotech's going to be really cool. You see the hints of this in iGEM, but imagine the entirety of our culture thinks biotechnology is cool. Now, this is very abstract, and maybe you don't believe me, so let me just give you the postcards I see that help me believe this to be real and much more powerful than we might understand. I'll skip the first one. Let's talk about anything we can learn to encode in DNA we can grow. And this is a hat tip to Tom Knight. First time I heard this idea was from Tom over 20 years ago. Gosh, we have such a problem sourcing computers today because making computers is really hard. What if making computers was like growing zucchini or some other vegetable that was really easy to grow? What if you could use biology to make hardware, and we'd use that as our manufacturing process for really otherwise difficult things to, well, here's a plan for doing that. We just have to go do it. For the first time in 2024, I bought 2 GMO plants and I'm growing them in my house. These are petunias that have been engineered to emit light. And that little photograph on the top right is taken from my bedroom while I'm in bed, and that's a nightlight. They're bioluminescent plants. In the biotic future, biotechnology is going to be all around us, just going to be normal. This is a synthetic egg. This is a simple cell-like system that's built from scratch with purified molecules, and we're just now learning what DNA to add to it to get it to grow and divide, and we haven't figured that out yet, but as soon as we get to that, we might have an operating system for programming life at the cellular scale. And if we can get that to happen, then we have actually made biology easy to engineer, and we have routinized bioengineering workflows. What if in 10 years, iGEM's like that? Your research projects at the cellular scale work because we can actually do the engineering. Looks like we could pull that off if we go do it. Here are the Nobel Prizes for this year on the left, using AI to model proteins, But then on the right, if you train large language models on these objects, you can emit new objects, right? Computational boost for making new biology. And here's a friend and colleague, Ahmed Best. He's visiting Stanford, and we're looking at bioluminescent tobacco and petunias. Ahmed is an actor. Maybe you saw him in Mandalorian because he's a master Jedi saving Baby Yoda from Order 66, right? When Ahmed thinks about synthetic biology, he thinks literally about musical synthesis and composition. He thinks it's cool, right? So when I think about the biotic future, design the DNA anywhere, grow the biology everywhere, routinization of workflows, biology is a general purpose technology, and so on, right? Like, that's what we could make real. If we pull that off, it's not that we just magically wait for the 2050s to show up. You need to be thinking about what needs to be true by 2040. You need to be thinking about what needs to be true by 2030. And since it's just a few months from 2025, we got to get going. Like, you don't want to be coming back to iGEM in 10 years like it's like now. Like, it has to be way better. If we pulled it off, the physics of flourishing are pretty good. You could equip 10 billion humans to have good lives for themselves without trashing the place, without driving things to extinction. And if we really got together, we'd get this done in time for the next generation to enjoy it. That's what I'm thinking. iGEM is about competition. And so let me close with a reflection on competition and how important it is for us and our community. When you look at the roots of this word, again, go back in your own language and find meaning for yourself. But what I find is, it's like, well, we're competing to win. It's a rivalry. But another part of competition is about bringing out our best in each other. If I'm a competitor, I want to be motivated to do my absolute best. And if we're thinking about the world we want to make and actually pulling this off, we're going to have to be our absolute best, not just individually, but all together. And that brings me to one last thing. You see it as iGEM introduces itself to you if you haven't seen iGEM before. It's the fact that we're a community not only based on an emerging biotechnology frontier and competition, but also a community that's grounded in love. The fact that we care for each other as we're competing, and the fact that we have empathy for others, right, as we're getting to the future we're hoping to make real. Thank you.
Thank you so much,